Get ready, because what you're about to hear is not just a historical correction, it is the systematic demolition of one of the greatest infamies of the 20th century. You have spent your whole life hearing two words that together form a lie repeated 1,000 times: Spanish flu. They taught you this in school, you've seen it in lazy documentaries, and you've read it in headlines every time a new pandemic arises. But the reality is much darker, much more complex, and above all, much more unjust. Spain was not the executioner. Spain was the victim that had the courage to turn on the light when the rest of the world preferred to hide in the shadows. To understand the magnitude of this deception, we cannot remain on the surface. We have to dig into the earth, travel through time, analyze secret military documents, review censorship laws, and accompany scientists to the frozen graves of the Arctic. This is the definitive account, with data, names, exact dates and locations of how the world blamed Spain for an apocalypse that was manufactured on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Our story begins far from Tapas, Flamenco, or the sun of the Iberian Peninsula. You have to place yourself on the map of the United States, specifically in the Midwest, in a harsh and arid region. It is Haskell County, in the state of Kansas. The calendar marks January of 1918. The world is bleeding out in the First World War, but there, among pig farms and fields of crops, the war seems distant. However, something invisible and lethal is brewing in the air. The protagonist of this first chapter is Dr. Lawrence Miner. He is not just any doctor. He is a man of science, respected, burly, and with an insatiable curiosity, practicing in the small town of Santa Fe, in the heart of Haskell. At the end of January, at the beginning of February of 1918, Miner starts receiving a wave of patients that leaves him perplexed. They are strong farmers, people used to hard work, who come to his office literally shattered. They present symptoms that seem like the flu, yes, but taken to the extreme. Headaches that feel like hammer blows to the skull, muscle pains that prevent movement, and a fever that rises at a terrifying speed. But what scared Mina the most is the speed of contagion and the violence of the disease in healthy young people. Mina, concerned, does something that would have changed history if he had been heeded. He sits in his office and writes a detailed report. He alerted United States public health officials about a flu of severe nature.
This is critical.
The report travels to Washington, and there, in the offices of the bureaucracy, it is filed away and forgotten. No one paid attention to that rural doctor from Kansas. That administrative silence was the death sentence for 50 million people. Haskell County was not an isolated place. Its young people, children of those farmers who were already getting sick, were being massively recruited to fight in Europe. And this is where the virus finds its highway to the world. At the end of February 1918, a group of these recruits traveled from Pascagoula to Camp Funston, a gigantic military facility located within the Fort Riley base, also in Kansas. Camp Funston was a city of wooden barracks and tents where 56,000 soldiers were crowded. The conditions were the perfect breeding ground for an epidemic. Intense cold, men sleeping tightly packed together, stress, and dust. And then comes the key day, the day that should be marked in black in the history books, and not any date related to Spain. It is March 4th, 1918. A camp cook, Albert Gitchell, reports to the infirmary before breakfast. He complains of a bad cold, high fever, and sore throat.
I can't breathe.
Gitchell is the official patient zero of the pandemic.
Try to relax.
Minutes after Gitchell, Corporal Lee Drake enters. Then, Sergeant Adolph Hervey.
Surgery.
By lunchtime, the military doctors are overwhelmed.
Right away.
There are 107 admissions. The virus, which had jumped from birds to pigs and from pigs to humans on the farms of Haskell, had just exploded in the heart of the American war machinery. In 3 weeks, 1,100 soldiers from Camp Funston were hospitalized, and thousands more were infected, although with milder symptoms, spreading the virus to every corner of the base. If the virus had stayed in Kansas, it would have been a local tragedy. But the United States Army was on the move. Those infected soldiers in Funston were put on trains and sent to different training camps across the country, infecting other units. And finally, they were sent to the East Coast to cross the Atlantic. The virus boarded the ships. You have to imagine the scene on vessels like the SS Leviathan or the SS Olympics. They were massive transports where thousands of men were put in the holds. During the crossing, the virus mutated or simply took advantage of the men's weakness. The soldiers began to fall ill at sea. The doctors on board were overwhelmed. The men drowned in their own fluids, with their skin turning blue from lack of oxygen, a symptom called heliotrope cyanosis. The bodies piled up on the decks or were thrown into the sea. When those ships docked at the port of Brest, in France or in Southampton, in England, they did not just disembark reinforcements, they disembarked the plague. We are in April of 1918. The virus is already in the trenches of the Western Front. It affected the French, it affected the British, it crossed the lines and affected the Germans. The impact was militarily devastating. The German general Erich Ludendorff, in his memoirs, blames the flu for slowing the momentum of his final offensives. On the British side, the Grand Fleet has more than 10,000 sailors out of action. In May of 1918, the epidemic is an open secret among the soldiers, but a state secret for the government. And here, we enter the realm of politics and lies. The United States, France, the United Kingdom, and Germany have something in common: strict wartime censorship. They cannot allow the enemy to know that their armies are weakened. They cannot allow the civilian population working in munitions factories to panic. So they remain silent. Newspapers are forbidden from mentioning the epidemic. In the United States, the Sedition Act is applied, allowing the imprisonment of anyone who publishes news that harms the war effort. Military doctors falsify death reports. They talk about pneumonia, bronchitis, but never about a massive flu epidemic. While the world remained silent, Spain reported. Spain was neutral in the First World War. It had no soldiers in the trenches, did not have to hide military weaknesses, and most importantly, had no press censorship on public health issues. When the virus crossed the Pyrenees at the end of May 1918, probably brought by Portuguese workers or by rail traffic with France, the Spanish press did what it had to do: report. The virus reached Madrid and hit hard. The San Isidro festivities were suspended. The trams stopped running because the drivers were sick. The teletypes were buzzing. The newspaper, ABC, El Sol, La Vanguardia, all published alarming front pages about the strange illness. Even King Alfonso XIII fell seriously ill, which gave unprecedented international visibility to the problem.
Ha avisado a la familia.
The transparency of Spain was its condemnation. The correspondents of the newspapers from London and Paris, stationed in Madrid, read these news and sent them to their editorial offices. The editors in London and Washington saw an opportunity. They had a perfect alibi. They could not talk about their deceased, but they could talk about those in Spain. The newspaper, The Times of London, was one of the main architects of this lie. In early June, they began publishing articles referring to the Spanish influenza. It was a brilliant and evil distraction strategy. By calling it the Spanish flu, the Allied governments managed to externalize the blame. The disease did not come from their dirty camps or their crowded ships. It came from that southern country, neutral and unrelated to the war. It was a geopolitical marketing operation. While thousands of people were dying in cities like Philadelphia or Boston in the United States, the press kept talking about the Spanish flu. It's curious how in Spain, at first, people took it with humor. They called it the soldier from Naples. Why? Because at that time, there was a very famous zarzuela in Madrid, the Song of Forgetting, and one of its musical numbers, the one about the soldier of Naples, was so catchy that everyone hummed it. They said the virus was as catchy as the song, but the joke didn't last long when the casualties started to become serious. The second wave of the flu, the one that hit in the fall of 1918, was the real slaughter. And this is where the data debunks another myth. Spain was not by any means the country most affected in terms of proportional mortality. The virus mutated and became incredibly aggressive. It caused a cytokine storm. The immune system of young people reacted so strongly that it destroyed the lungs. In Spain, officially about 147,000 people died, although modern estimates raise the figure to 260,000. An immense tragedy. But let's look at the rest of the world to put it in context. In India, under British rule, the colonial management of the pandemic was disastrous, and between 12 and 17 million people died. The Ganges River was clogged with bodies. In the western Samoan Islands, the virus arrived on a New Zealand ship and killed 22% of the total population in a matter of weeks. In the United States, the true origin of the pandemic, 675,000 people died. Life expectancy in the United States dropped 12 years in 1980. Cities like Philadelphia collapsed after allowing a massive parade to sell war bonds, ignoring doctors' warnings. In days, they had thousands of deaths and no coffins left. They had to bury people in boxers used for transporting food or in mass graves dug with steam machinery. But of course, the official story kept pointing to Spain. But the definitive proof, the smoking gun, that exonerated Spain beyond any reasonable doubt, does not come from historical archives, but from modern genetics laboratories. For decades, the origin of the virus was a mystery, but there were scientists determined to find the truth. One of them was Johan Hultin, a Swedish-American pathologist. Hultin had a theory. If he could find bodies of victims from 1918 buried in the permafrost, in permanently frozen ground, perhaps the virus would be preserved there. In 1951, he traveled to Brevik Mission, a small village in Alaska where the flu had killed 70 of its 83 inhabitants in 5 days. He exhumed bodies, but the technology of the time did not allow him to sequence the virus. Hultin did not give up. He waited almost 50 years. In 1997, at 72 years old, he returned to Brevik Mission. He asked the village elders for permission to dig again. And there, he found Lucy, an Inuit woman whose body had been protected by body fat and ice. In her frozen lungs was the answer. Hultin sent the samples to Dr. Jeffrey Toppenberger from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington. What Toppenberger and his team found closed the case forever. In 2005, they managed to reconstruct the complete genetic sequence of the 1918 virus. The results were published in the world's most prestigious scientific journals, such as Nature and Science. And what did that genetic data say? First, they confirmed that it was an A virus subtype H1N1 of avian origin. But most importantly, the phylogenetic analysis showed that the precursor strains of the virus had been circulating in wild and domestic birds in North America years before the pandemic. The virus jumped to mammals in the American Midwest, adapted, and then jumped to humans. There was no trace of European origin, much less Spanish, in the genetic structure of the virus. The key mutations that enabled it to jump from human to human occurred in the United States, most likely in those early months of 1918 in Kansas. Science had spoken. The label Spanish flu was biologically incorrect and politically motivated. So, why do we keep calling it that? Out of inertia, intellectual laziness, and because history is written by the victors. The Allies won the First World War and solidified their narrative. Spain, weakened, neutral, and absorbed in its own political and social problems, did not have the diplomatic strength to demand a correction. The name stuck like a brand. But today, with the information at hand, we have the responsibility to correct it. It's not about nationalism. It's about accuracy. Calling the 1918 pandemic the Spanish flu is like calling COVID-19 the Italian COVID. Just because Italy was the first Western country to report massive cases and close its borders, it's absurd and unfair. Modern epidemiologists and historians prefer the term the 1918 flu. Some bolder and more precise suggest the Kansas flu. If we want to honor the deceased and learn from past mistakes, the first step is to call things by their real name. Spain was transparent, supportive, and paid a very high price in human lives. Its reward was to be blamed by history. The next time you hear someone say Spanish flu, don't stay silent. Tell them the story of the cook Albert Gitchell at Camp Funston. Talk to them about Dr. Miner in Haskell County. Explain to them how war censorship hid the truth in the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. And remind them that Spain's only fault was having a free press that dared to tell the truth when the whole world was lying. The data is there. Military records, genetic sequences, newspaper archives. Everything points in the same direction. It was not the Spanish flu. It was the great lie of 1918. And now that you know the full story, with all its nuances and details, you have the power to change the narrative. Because the truth, even if it takes more than a century, always deserves to be told.